Hey everybody, it's Aiden here once again with another Storytime episode. Now, you may be thinking that this video has already been done, but it turns out there was some wrong information in it that this version of the video aims to put right, as well as clear up some confusion. Now, this is mainly a sim racing channel that covers stories from the real world of motorsport at the same time, hence using the sims to demo the cars of the era. Now, the footage is merely a placeholder, as these are intended as podcasts and something to listen to while doing other stuff. Now, it is annoying to me, personally, that I got some of the information wrong, as the original was my most popular video with over 15,000 views. So, with all that said, today is the story of an innovator, a man who managed to take the rulebook and make it his own, and a man whose innovation has gone largely ignored on our side of the Atlantic. This is America's answer to Colin Chapman, Henry Smokey Yunick. Smokey was most associated with the American oval racing series NASCAR, and in that series held virtually every job there was to have: driver, mechanic, designer, builder, and crew chief. He was renowned as an opinionated character who was a talented mechanic, and his trademark white uniform, battered cowboy hat and corncob pipe were familiar sights in every NASCAR race for over 20 years. And he often clashed with NASCAR founder Bill France, who didn't like the rough and tumble stock car culture that Yunick personified. Yunick was born to Ukrainian immigrants on the 25th of May 1923 in Neshaminy, Pennsylvania. At age 16 he was forced to drop out of school as his father died and someone had to run the farm. His lack of education never hurt him, and he was able to put his talents to good use, such as building an entire working tractor out of a wrecked car, optimising the existing machinery and making sure everything worked properly. In his spare time, he started building and racing motorbikes, and it was a smoking motorbike that gave him the nickname Smokey. When the Americans entered World War II, Smokey joined the Army Air Corps and piloted a B-17 named Smokey and his Firemen, which sounds like a really bad Mike and the Mechanics tribute band. While initially being stationed in Italy, he moved to the Pacific Theatre just after VE Day. In 1946, he moved to Florida, because he'd seen it from the pilot seat of his B-17 flying to England, and it looked warm. He also set up a garage business, Smokey's Best Damn Garage in Town, which is a little bit cocky, isn't it? Sadly, the garage burned down in 2011, and not much remains apart from one wall. Big Smoke's reputation as a mechanic rose. Marshall Teague, a local race team owner, invited him to join, and the offer was accepted despite Smokey not being completely familiar with how it worked. At his first race in Darlington, South Carolina, a Yunick-prepared Hudson Hornet won the race. While preparing cars, Yunick found time to do some innovation on the cars. Such innovations included the reverse torque special of 1959, which had the engine running in reverse. Not reverse gear, but the crankshaft and so on was running the other way. In his own words, with conventional engine rotation, you're transferring weight to the right-hand side of the car. When you turn left, the weight is going there anyway, so if you reverse the rotation, then the weight goes to the left front and left rear and takes any extra load off the right front. Weight is better distributed, increases lateral traction on both ends, and you go faster. Which seems like a good idea if you ask me. Broken down into simple terms, most modern cars like mine or yours have the engine rotating anti-clockwise. There's no real reason for it, it's just how it's done. If you reverse the engine's torque and the torque reaction on the chassis as well, then you can theoretically improve the load distribution for left-hand only turns that you find on American oval tracks. Fuck knows how he rigged the car to do it, but it worked. Sort of. I mean, it wasn't faster, and it wasn't slower either. I mean, it was a great idea, but it's not like everybody else was copying him the following year. Following good friend Fireball Roberts' 1964 crash, after which he died, ironically of burns, Yunick demanded safety improvements much like Jackie Stewart would do here in Europe. When the powers that be would not listen to him, Yunick left NASCAR. In 1962, Yunick changed motor racing forever when he mounted a rear wing on a Simonet's Vista Special Watson Roadster, which is a pretty huge mouthful, that's what she said, for the Indy 500. The wing allowed the driver, Jim Rathman, to corner at incredible speeds on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but the drag meant slower straight-line speed. In Formula 1, fantastic, as it's the corners where F1 cars excel over Indy cars. On ovals, where top speed is key, not so much. Oh, and you know who else entered a car into that race? Colin Chapman. USAC immediately banned the wings, but when they started to appear on Formula 1 and Can-Am cars by the end of the decade, in the 70s, they were permitted again. As with most successful designers, mechanics, engineers and racers, Smokey was a master of exploiting the grey areas in rulebooks. One of the most famous incidences was when his number 13 Chevy Chevelle was much faster than everybody else's. The other team suspected he might be cheating by using some sort of aerodynamic trickery, but the car's profile looked like everybody else's. It was eventually discovered that Smokey had lowered and modified the roof and windows, but raised the floor to lower the body. Since that event, NASCAR has required each car's roof, bonnet and boot, roof, hood, and trunk, fit exact templates of the production car to ensure fairness. The process continues today, although NASCAR checks each car much more routinely. Another inspired innovation was getting around the rules for the maximum size of the fuel tank. When filled to the top with petrol, the other cars, for the sake of argument, were able to do about 40 laps on one tank. Yunick's car was able to do another 10 or 12 laps more. How? They were all using the same fuel tank. NASCAR officials once took the fuel tank out so they could check it and gave Yunick a list of 9 things he needed to change before the car was legal. When Smokey started the car and drove away without a fuel tank, he reportedly said, "Better make it 10. So how was his car running on no fuel? Battery power? Second fuel tank? This story is actually an episode of Wacky Races? None of those things, although it could be the second one. What Smokey had done was he'd read the rulebook regarding the fuel tank, but discovered there was no rule regarding the length of the fuel line. Being the way he was, he added 3-metre coils of 2-inch diameter piping to the fuel line that allowed the car to carry another 5 gallons or 19 litres of fuel for a race, and therefore be able to go on longer stints than the rest of the field. Other teams accused him of cheating, but in reality, Smokey had not cheated. He had the same fuel tank as everybody else. Colin Chapman was doing exactly the same thing in Formula 1, although innovation in Formula 1 came in a sport where development was much more open and less likely to be deemed cheating. Every sport has got its Lance Armstrong. Even though Lance eventually admitted to doing it, we all knew he was doing it, and him fessing up was just confirmation of what we already knew. Cheating in sports is common and happens all the time, and you're naive if you think otherwise. Footballers taking a dive in the 18-yard box to get a cheap penalty. Armstrong with his doping. Bodybuilders with their doping. The rugby team that did the thing with the blood capsule, and Tom Brady with the low-pressure footballs. Then in motorsport terms, we've got the 2008 race-fixing scandal, Schumacher attempting to punt Villeneuve off the road at Jerez in '97, and parking his car at Rascasse, and the Benetton thing, and hitting Damon. And then we've got Senna punting Prost at Suzuka. These are the obvious instances of cheating, and I can guarantee you it runs a lot deeper than we all realise. Now, I'm not here to get on my soapbox and preach about it, but I'm trying to put it all into context here. Cheating in motorsport, or any sport for that matter, is rife. When I used to play football, we all took a dive to get the other player sent off. Why? Because they were doing it all the time in Italian football, and they got away with it. Now those Italian and South American players that were all doing it in their own leagues all came to the Premier League, and now they're doing it over here, and now all the English players like Dele Alli and Ashley Young are at it. Adrian Newey's job, for instance, is not to cheat. It's to bend the rules as much as possible without breaking them. That line gets blurred sometimes, and the determination to win at all costs surpasses an individual's moral values. That is why the blown diffuser was not cheating. Twatting your car into a title rivals to win the championship is cheating. Schumacher got caught. Armstrong got caught. Briatore got caught. Justin Gatlin got caught twice and should be banned from athletics for life like every other person that was caught twice. Prick. Sorry, I'm quite into athletics. Senna should have done, but he wasn't. The worst part is when these cheaters get caught, they then try to justify it by saying everybody else is doing it and you gotta do what you gotta do to win. When I played football, it was the late 90s and nobody thought twice about it. But it was true. Everybody was doing it, even us kids. But if we did get caught, we took it on the chin. We got caught. They hadn't. Yet. Which is the same argument that Armstrong made after he got found out and was all, well, Floyd Landis and Tyler Hamilton were doing it and they were on the same team as me. Yes, Landis, Hamilton and the rest of the peloton were at it. I mean, probably only Landis and Hamilton were caught, and it's pretty certain that Wigo is at it as well. They were doing it to keep up with Armstrong, who had basically weaponised doping. But it was the issue that Lance threw everybody under the bus to protect himself that... That's probably another video altogether. Back to motorsport though, and trying to stay on topic, it starts at the lowest level. Karts. People putting tyres into chemicals to make them softer and thus give more grip, for instance, and running engines that produce an illegal amount of power. The thing is, what Newey, Braun, Chapman, Gordon Murray and all the other genius F1 engineers did was just clever ways of working around the rules. Performance enhancing drugs such as running illegal engines, soaking tyres and taking human growth hormone are not. For instance, in 2009 with the new regulations, the Braun, Toyota and Williams teams all had the same bright idea. The rules stated that the rear diffuser had to have certain dimensions. It didn't specify how many diffusers you were allowed to have. So we had the double diffuser concept, which helped improve rear downforce in slower corners. The FIA banned it, and now the rules explicitly say you can only have one diffuser. Then Adrian Newey came up with a master plan to avoid that rule. The rules said you could only have one diffuser, but they never said anything about where the exhausts could go and nothing about using those exhaust gases to blow over the diffuser and create more downforce. Thus, the blown diffuser. That's now been banned, and the rules now state a single exhaust can only be used and has to be on a certain point of the car. Now we have the monkey seat, which I think has now been banned for 2018. Another exploitation of rules that did not exist was when Smoke turned up to a race with stock rear fenders, which are bumpers, I guess, that partially covered the rear tyres of a Chevy Chevelle. The aerodynamic properties were much better than running without, and the car was much faster than everybody else's. After qualifying, others teased him as to how he would ever change the tyres on the rear of the car, as others had removed the fenders for that reason. Yunick went away without saying a word, and the next thing people saw was Smokey taking angle grinder to the car to remove the fenders for the race. When the other teams protested to the officials, Smokey told them the rules said we were allowed to remove them, but they didn't say anything about when we can remove them, which is probably how Parc Fermé was invented. Virtually every rule in the current NASCAR rulebook is there because of Smokey, but like the double and blown diffusers, frick, mass dampers, the F-duct and so on, they were merely exploitations of grey areas that were, in the early days of NASCAR, as big as some of the states they raced in. I seriously doubt that any of these broken rules, in inverted commas, were flat out attempts at disobeying the sanctioning body's wishes, or see the Tyrrell ledge shot controversy that I will link below. Instead of saying, well, everybody else is at it like Lance Armstrong did, Smokey operated on a, it doesn't say here I can't, so it's fair game, and a classic case of, I didn't think of it first, so I want it banned from the other drivers and teams. But Smokey was right. If it did not say how long the fuel line had to be, he'd make a longer one. If it did not say he was not allowed to modify his car between sessions, he would. Anybody else would. Yunick also used such innovations such as offset chassis, raised floors, roof spoilers, nitrous injection, and other modifications often within the letter of the rulebook, if not the spirit. Yunick wrote in his autobiography, "It was just self-defense." Off-track, Smokey also came up with a primitive version of the safer barrier, which was a tyre wall in between sheets of plywood that would mean instead of the tyres going absolutely everywhere in a crash, the wall would remain mostly intact and be easily put back together under a full course yellow. Smokey also invented the air jacks that we see on Indy cars, GTs, LMPs and V8 supercars today, but when he devised the idea in 1961, NASCAR didn't think it would work, but in all those disciplines I've just mentioned, they're standard. He is also the owner of at least 9 patents in the United States, one of which is a machine that can spin an engine up to 19,000 revolutions a minute without even needing to turn the engine on. Another, for reasons I can only describe as fuck it why not, Smokey also rigged a V8 engine to run on animal fat. I don't think Black Country Snacks do a packet of pork scratchings that has the sweet, sweet taste of Esso. The other scientific achievements I can also find include variable ratio power steering, the extended tip spark plug, reverse flow cooling systems, the high efficiency vapor carburetor. Now if you're under the age of 35, a carburetor is what was used before fuel injection was a thing. They still used it in NASCAR until recently, and I, like many others, have no idea why. There was also synthetic oil advancements and alternative energy advancements in hydrogen, windmills and solar panels, as well as involving himself in the developing gold mining and petroleum industries in Ecuador. The modern day Yunick has to be Chad Knaus, the crew chief behind Jimmy Johnson's Sprint Cup Championships. His run-ins with NASCAR inspectors were almost non-stop, at least until the current Car of Tomorrow became more tightly defined. In 2005, NASCAR found Knaus's carefully engineered shock absorbers so ingenious that they cited Smokey's brilliance before penalising him, and declared the shocks illegal. In fact, Knaus has been suspended 4 times in 6 seasons. After winning the Daytona 500 in 2006, the New York Times wrote that there was a stigma attached to Jimmy Johnson's win, because Knaus had been suspended for 4 races, fined $25,000 for a device mounted to the rear window that changed its angle, making it more aerodynamic. In the 2007 Daytona 500, 6 Nextel Cup teams got collared, including the cars of Michael Waltrip, Matt Kenseth and Casey Kane, resulting in 5 crew chief suspensions, 500 total points docked from drivers and owners, and $250,000 in fines. It seems that cheating in NASCAR is as traditional as the English Sunday roast. Today, with the Car of Tomorrow, NASCAR competitors' cars inch through NASCAR's tech inspection line at least 3 times each weekend, and is poured over by 50 yellow-clad inspectors wielding more than 30 templates to measure exteriors. The first check used to take up to 10 hours, but officials speed through in 2018 thanks to 9 radio frequency identification or RFID chips that chat with computers to confirm chassis legality. Unfortunately, with virtually all the loopholes in a surprisingly small rulebook of just 184 pages closed, the chances of another Yunick in NASCAR are slim. Instead, we're just going to get a lot of Chad Knaus. Outside of racing, Yunick had a column in the 1960s and 70s called Say Smokey, which was a staple of popular science magazine. It was just Smokey responding to letters sent to him regarding mechanical issues affecting breeders' cars and how to improve them. Here in the UK, we have Gardener's Question Time on BBC Radio 4, which is a very effective way of falling asleep. Actually, just listening to BBC Radio 4 in general is enough for you to fall asleep. Smokey also wrote for Circle Track magazine and published his autobiography Sex, Lies and Super Speedways in 2001. The audiobook version is narrated by John DeLorean of That Car from Back to the Future fame. Smokey was inducted into the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in 1990 and the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America in 2000. Smokey is a member of over 30 halls of fame across the United States and the rest of the world in recognition of his innovations in motorsport. Sadly, Smokey passed away in May 2001, aged 77, after a short battle with leukemia. He is survived by his wife, his 4 sons, his 2 daughters, and their 9 grandchildren. So that was the full story of Smokey Yunick, and I hope you enjoyed this story time, as it's a bit different because normally I talk about Formula 1 or V8 supercars and now has corrected information in it, although there's probably still bits I've missed. So I hope you've learned something new, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. So thank you very much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and as always, have a great day wherever you live in the world. I've been Aidan Millward, and I'm off to play some Kerbal Space Program. Goodbye.